Welcome to my video on the introduction to the SPSS interface. To begin, find the IBM SPSS statistics program on your computer. When you open it, the first thing you will always see, and this is the only time SPSS throws this splash screen up here, is the screen that gives you several options for accessing data. You can open a new data set, open other types of files like CVS files, Excel files, etc. However, I want to show you how to access data if you are in the regular interface, if you don't have that open. So what you would do is you would click on File, and you can open a new data set or import another type of file right here. For our purposes, we're just going to show you how to just basically enter data from scratch. In SPSS, there are two views, unlike Excel, where you just have your basic rows and columns. Here we have data view, which looks like Excel, and also variable view. This is where you define your data. So back in data view, you can just simply begin entering your data. For example, 6.6, 5.6, 6.2, 5.9, 5.4, etc. And having done this, this would represent, each column would represent one variable. So for example, if my first column was height, I could make the next column for another variable like weight, or scores on an intelligence test would fill another column. And going across would actually represent each individual or case in my data. And if you click on variable view, we can see how SPSS sort of typically labels your data. It will name it generally variable 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But we can come up with a better name and just label it height, so we understand what it is later, and so on. If I wanted to, I could just create another variable starting right from here by entering a label, and so on. SPSS has determined the type of variable automatically, and so on. Generally, we stick to three basic types of data in SPSS. SPSS prefers numeric data when you conduct analysis, so we try to stick with that, and that's just data with only numbers. Any data that has any letters or symbols thrown in, SPSS will assign it as string data. That's usually words or anything with anything else other than numbers. And then date data. For date data, you can determine what type of format you prefer to use. If you have string data, like male or female, you can assign it numbers by using the recode function. See my video on how to recode data. It is recommended that you try to stick to only numeric data. When performing analysis, it's necessary to perform functions like t-tests in ANOVA. Width just is explaining how wide or how many spaces are available if you're using string data, that's words. Decimals is how many decimals are in the number. For label, this gives you the option to label your data better. So if under name, you're not, SPSS doesn't allow you to add spaces or any other characters besides letters. And if you try to, it throws an error. So if I enter, I can actually do that here if I wish. And then you can add a space if needed. Values, if you have numbers that are representing, for example, males and females, you can tell SPSS what the numbers represent. So if, for example, I have 1s and 2s here and they represent males and females, I can tell SPSS that my 1s are males, for example, and my 2s are females, and so on. Here is where, in the column for missing, is where I tell SPSS what to do with any missing data. Columns is just how wide the columns are in the data. If I go to data view, I can actually adjust this, and this number will change. And if you notice, the decimals are missing in the data that I had entered, but I had entered data that had decimals. So if I go back and I increase them, you can see that they're back. Align is just aligning the data left, right, or center. And measure is where it tells you whether you have scale, ordinal, or nominal data. In SPSS, scale represents interval or ratio data. And those are basically the categories you will use. We don't use align or roll or columns or width very often. Mostly we stick to name, type, decimal, labels, values, and measure.